Very much for being here. Apex Lacrosse webinar 002. Very honored and humbled to have Coach Berkman from Salisbury, Coach Archbell from Bowdoin, and Coach Barnard from Hamilton College with us today. We're all very vigilant and aware of the times in which we are in, exercising an overabundance of caution, and we are all, compassionate and thoughtful in this moment. We want to create meaningful content and purposeful content to kind of share with families and players during these unique times, which is the reason we're doing this and the reason why we're so honored and humbled to have the kind of leaders that are on here today. And first round, we kind of go around and get each of their perspectives on what's going on with them, what's going on with their schools, their programs, their rosters, their dynamics that they're handling, their environments. It's really interesting to hear their perspectives, and then we'll move on from there into the second round of this, where we really do start focusing on growth and development of the student athletes. So we'll start off with Coach Berkman. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, MV, and Scott and Jason. Thanks for joining us here. I think that we can share some light and give some people some thoughts about moving forward. Anything we can do, I think that the players and the parents would greatly appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to have a quick shout out to our former goalie, Anthony Stradivakis from Hillsborough and Leading Edge, who's in day 12 of the virus, living in New York City. Been communicating with him quite regularly. He seems to be getting on the other end of it, although the fever did come back again today in day 12, but he thinks he's hopefully kind of beaten it. When one hits at home like that, it really puts some things in perspective for sure. But shout out to Anthony and his family. Wish you all the best and get well from the Gulls. Second thing, I kind of got a unique perspective. I had a lot of older parents. I think my dad was 40 when I was born, and he was born in 1919. And he grew up, in the Great Depression. He grew up and was part of World War II. And as a kid, him sharing some of those thoughts and the rationing and the things that transpired in the 20s and the 30s and 40s in our country, it makes it a little bit easier for me to put in perspective of where we're at right now and some of the times that we're going through, and makes me really appreciate now more than ever what my parents, were brought up and had to go through in their younger ages. But in regard to our team and this whole thing, 2 weeks ago today, it was on Thursday, that the NCAA said that, we were no longer going to be playing, and we were on the field practicing at that point, that afternoon. And man, I've been coaching for 38 years, and I've seen a lot in 38 years. But man, that in that locker room that afternoon for the next half hour, it was one of the hardest and just most difficult things. And I'm sure Scott and Jason, nothing has prepared us in our history of coaching for that day and what went on. And it was extremely disappointing for our guys. We were off to a great start. Everybody in the locker room knew this was a pretty good Seagull team, and we're pretty loaded at all the positions to make a great run this year. So that made it even more disappointing. But at the end of the day, for us, we tried to look, there's always, where there's disappointment and there's mistakes, there's opportunities. And we tried to build on that shortly thereafter. And we're fortunate for us. I know it's going to be difficult for some other people, but it looks at this point that 9 or 10 of our guys who are seniors are going to be able to come back and play, next year, who are all the better players on this team. And that's great news for the Gulls going forward. I don't know if it's great news for all the other coaches, because I know for some of them, for their players coming back, it's extremely financial hardship. It's going to be very, very difficult. But, as far as our program goes in this difficult time, and you talk about the steps that we're taking, as that was one of your questions. Well, first of all, the first step is obviously academics. We were on spring break last week, and Monday was we're at day 4 of online total learning. And that's definitely been a challenge for everybody, because we have a number of professors that have never taught online, that have been forced to teach online. So just getting our guys to make sure that they got everything in the right spot so that they can continue to be successful academically was our number 1 priority. And then number 2, our culture at Salisbury has always been built on the stuff outside the 3 to 5. We know everybody works really hard, at Bowdoin, and everybody works really hard at Hamilton from 3 to 5. But we've always been a team that pride itself on the stuff outside of 3 to 5 that a lot of us have to do on our own. And we call that edging here, and we talk about edging every day. And so for our guys, I think that it's going to be a little bit easier than for some players, because they're used to doing a lot of stuff on their own, and they've got to create this environment now on their own in their backyard, which they do pretty well here, to move forward and to continuing to improve and continuing to develop as we go forward. And hopefully, like it's been here for a number of years, guys always come back. It's not worrying about rebuilding. We're going to be reloading, because guys have worked very hard on their own and have taken this opportunity with this extra time on their own to get better.
Thank you very much, Coach. Wise insight. Coach Barnard, you have the floor, sir.
First, I want to thank you, MV, for having me here today, and hello to Coach Archbell and Coach Berkman and Brian, who played for me at Hamilton, and had the pleasure of coaching him. So appreciate all of you guys being with us here today. I thought about what to say today, and how to come across, and we're in a world pandemic with this coronavirus, and it's affecting a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and our hearts go out to them. We have actually a NESCAC player who's battling right now, and Jack Allard, Bates player, and our thoughts and prayers go out to him. So I'm sure we all know people that are being affected, and our thoughts and prayers are going out to everybody. That being said, Coach Berkman kind of took us back to our timeline, and I was going through that with one of my players today on a call, and we had come off a game on a Saturday. We were still practicing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Our AD came and spoke, and we're still going to push ahead. We're evaluating daily, and Thursday, the NCAA put it out that they're canceling that. We obviously canceled our season at that point, and didn't move forward with our game that weekend. And so Thursday it's over. Friday you're collecting equipment, and Saturday, kids are leaving, and we're on spring break at that time, so everybody's going home. And it was a pretty quick depart. And I think that was one of my concerns. You talk about the well-being of your student athletes and your students in general on your campuses, and that thought process. And it was like ripping a Band-Aid off. That being said, one of the things that we've been doing and since we've gotten back is just this week we actually spent, Monday through today, just spending time getting on the horn with our young men, and just trying to talk them. How are they doing? Our first calls were, just checking on them, checking on their families, seeing how they are. It wasn't about lacrosse, it was about life. And listen, how you doing? Everybody, our players went from going to class on a regular basis, on a daily basis, with our strength coach. They had a portion of that day cut out. They had 3 to 5 or whatever that may be. They had their study time, their quiet time, their dining hall. Now all of a sudden they're home, siblings under one roof, people trying to get a little space and carve out some time for Zooms and connections and things of that nature, but you're all under one roof, and it poses some serious challenges. But it kind of brought me back, Coach. You were talking about your family and your history. And when I grew up, my father went off to, when he went off to college, he was then, before that, before he went, he was drafted to Vietnam. And the end of the day, I'm sitting at home. I have my family and our loved ones around us. We got a place to sleep and be around loved ones and family. So I wanted to keep things in a little bit of perspective here that, as we're moving forward. But, MV, I've just been really thinking a lot about our perspective here and what we've been doing. The first thing that we've been trying to do with our guys is just having we call it a check-in time, and spending a lot of time just checking in with them, having those continuing to build our relationships with our players, and having a time that we're just talking them through scenarios and helping them. We're on spring break, so we're getting ready for online learning, which will start next Monday, making sure that everybody's geared up with their classes and ready to go. So that's been our first week.
Yes, Coach. Coach Garst, I want to follow that up.
Thanks for having me on, MV. Appreciate it. Coach Barnard, Coach Berkman, certainly humbled to be on with two great guys and two great coaches. So appreciate that. A lot for me has been just trying to figure out how to help our guys. Very similar, conversations that I've had, with, Coach Berkman talking about how tough it was a conversation with his team and how that locker room felt afterwards. Coach Barnard saying the same thing, it's tough. And so I've just been trying to think of ways to help them as much as possible, how to change their perspective on this thing, how to view it. Coach Berkman used the word as an opportunity. Still being really sensitive and empathetic to them, understanding that, there's a lot of tough things going on, and talking with our guys, there's so much that they're worried about. Some of them are in really, densely populated areas where COVID-19 is running rampant right now, and they're concerned about that. They have, some parents and family members are doctors and nurses, and they're, really concerned about that. Just trying to help them sort of change their perspective a little bit, and try to help them change their view as to like how this could be an opportunity for them. It's, you're never going to get a time to spend this much time with your family. I've got two little kids and trying to value that as much as I can right now. But also trying to figure out ways to give them a purpose, where a lot of our connection with our guys the last week is, trying to focus on that. Like, all right, hey, what are some things that we can do to give ourselves some purpose? How can we sort of challenge each other to use this time to our advantage? We're all on equal footing. I would never say that I'm on the same footing as Salisbury at any point in time, but we're in the same boat right now. And so how do we use that to our advantage as a team? But still being sensitive to what's going on in the world. And so been talking a lot about that, just different ways that we can stay connected, but, use, the things that we enjoy, competition, camaraderie, to help each other kind of through this time. We talk a lot about, you responding, how do we respond to events that happen to us? And trying to make sure that our responses are true and just and strong. And we need strong responses right now. And a lot of that's just being dependable in our actions, being consistent, being trustworthy teammates. And I think that's going to help us a lot. So those are the things that I've been trying to focus with on our team. I've had a lot of conversations with our leadership council, and captains, a lot of conversations. I've had, meetings with each of the classes. Next week, I'll have individual meetings with all the players online. And so just trying to do that as much as possible, maintain those connections. I think the things that they miss most are the things that we miss most as players, certainly the competition, but, it's, sitting at the dining hall, the bus rides, the locker room, like that stuff. And they're really missing that right now. And so how do we try to give some semblance of that to them right now to help them through this is kind of my focus right now with our guys.
Thanks, Coach. Taking notes while you guys are talking, points keep coming up that are really meaningful and kind of reinforce what the message should be and the messaging out of this as far as leadership goes. And you can't fake it, but consistent through all of your points were aspects of attitude, perspective, character. Coach Archbell just touched on the leadership element, the dependability, responsibility, accountability. Really interesting point about balancing sensitivity and opportunity, keeping those two things balanced but at the same time separate, which is a good transition into the second part of this, being sensitive and being compassionate and aware and situationally aware, helping families and helping athletes develop and continue on their growth, is more of a focus of an educator. If we're not growing and getting better, we certainly are potentially backsliding. We don't want our athletes, our student athletes, to backslide during this time. So I'd like to get your perspectives on that, and had a couple pre-conversations about this already. So I'm looking forward to this. So growth and development, Coach Barnard, you got the floor first on this one.
Thank you, MV. It's, as you said, you were taking notes as the coaches are talking. We're doing the same thing. I think I appreciated your comments, Coach Archbell and Coach Berkman, and yeah, it's a time for to pause and to to think about the players that are being affected, but it's also our job to inspire, to continue, encourage, and motivate. And I think, Jason, you said something really impactful, is changing their mind and, trying to lead them to a certain thought process and a certain attitude, how their outlook with this. So that kind of brings me to, my job right now, as I spent time with our calls and as we're going to do again next week, is one of the things that we really try to focus in on. One of the questions I pose to all my players is after how you doing and how your family's doing is what does your daily routine look like? Let's talk about that. Let's spend some time and dive into that. And I had each player kind of go in and, what time do you wake up? What are you doing after you wake up? And because what happened is everything was structured. A lot of their life was structured for our young men, their practice time, their eating time, their workout time, their lacrosse time, their individual time. Things are very structured. And not only do you get that structure taken away, now you're also living under one roof and you have limited resources. So this poses some challenges, right? And so one of the things we've been diving into is what does your routine look like, and then talk about that, and then help guide them in ways to build and create a routine that works for them, right? Having a consistent wake up time. And as our players start going off of spring break and getting into their online learning, they're going to have a little bit of that because they'll have their classes starting up, right? It's not, I'm going to work out today. What time are you going to work out? And what are you going to do with your workout? A lot of the gyms are closed. So now you're going back to body weight workouts, and whether it be kettlebells and push-ups and sit-ups, but not just saying that, but attacking that with a plan. And one of the things that we really try to impress upon our team and a lot of our talks is about not just attacking it, but being intentional. And it's a word we use all the time. We try to teach them how to be intentional, and not just to do things and say that they're going to do them. But let's talk about the workout. Let's write it down and let's follow through with that. Right. So let's get a wake up time. Let's get our study time penciled in. let's get our learning time, our Zoom time with our classes. What time are we eating lunch? Your meals, instead of just flowing in and out of dining halls, there's some preparation to that now, maybe, right? When some leisure time, when some time that you spend, maybe you jump on a Netflix or catch up with your friends or do some things of that nature, but trying to create this schedule that gives them some routine and they can find some peace within that routine, right? Just waking up and not wondering what you're going to do today and being able to attack that day. There's a big difference, I feel like. And we're trying to teach them how to wake up and how to attack the day and being intentional throughout the day. Here's my study time. Here's my Zoom time with my classes. Here's my workout time. As far as the lacrosse piece goes, throughout the year in practice, we always spend a portion of our time doing individual stuff, whether it be offensive guys shooting or defensive guys footwork and stick work and things of that nature. So we just say, hey, what are some of the things that you learned? What are some of the things that you can do? What resources do you have at home? If you don't have a ladder, you have a cone. Maybe you don't have a cone. Maybe you have a tree in the backyard. Whatever. We're gonna find and use the resources that you have and create something and be intentional with that. I'm not going to just go shoot. I'm going to do this type of. So I'm going to get a little run. I'm going to get a little dynamic. I'm going to get my hands warmed up, and I'm going to attack these 2 or 3 shooting drills, and I'm going to make myself better, and then I can have some time to shoot around. But really, it's just trying to spend time and helping them to create a routine, right? So that's one of the things that we've been doing. The other thing that, Jason, I think you talked about this is perspective. A lot of people right now have always said, I want to do something, but necessarily may not have the time. And well, here we all go. I can tell you that I've really enjoyed some extra family time. I can tell you that there's a book that I've picked up that I maybe necessarily didn't have the time to get through. So maybe try to find some time and some happiness in wrapping yourself in learning something new or having an opportunity to dive into something that you've always wanted to. I talked to one of my players the other day and he said, Coach, it's been awesome. I haven't played guitar since like the 7th grade. And, he's been having some time and opportunity to dive into that and listen to some of his music and get back into playing and, find some time, some happiness with that as well. But for right now, one of our main points has been trying to find some routine and help educate them on how to do that.
Awesome, Coach. Thank you. Very, very well put. Coach Archbell, you have the floor.
Thanks, MV. Appreciate it. Coach Barnard, awesome. I like a lot of the things you say, with regards to them. I think it is such an interesting time for these, recruits as you're talking to them and as you're talking to your own players and trying to give them, advice as well as give these recruits and their parents advice. I think it's, I think it's a lot of it's like focus on what's important right now. The time with your family is awesome. Like I said before, you won't ever get that back. So use it wisely. Focus on your academics. It's hard, maybe for some of these guys that are doing the online stuff, but as we all know in recruiting, that's the thing that's going to open or close the most doors for you, so if you can focus on those things, this is kind of a test run for college. You're not going from class to class to class like maybe you were when you're in high school or whatever. You've got a lot of free time. You're going to need to study. You need that structure that Coach Barnard talked about. How do you structure your day? What's a set schedule like for yourself? And then, how are you going to get better as a player? What what are you going to focus on? What do you have to use? Like Coach was saying, I think, trying to talk with your high school and club coaches and figure out, all right, where do I stand? Like, what do I need to work on? Like, what are the things that will make me a better recruit, like for a coach, and then trying to work that plan. Like, how do I get better? How do I, I know certain areas, like you can't get to a middle school, you can't get to an elementary school. They don't let you on the campus. So the wall that you used to always throw on, like, isn't there, or the goal that you used to always shoot on isn't there. So how do you figure out how to get better? We'll talk to these people, talk to these coaches, figure out what works. If you got a ball and a stick and something you can use as cones, and I mean, you can find a ton of different drills online, for some stick protection to different things like that you can use to make yourself a better player. And if that's a huge focus for you, like, control what you can control, and understand that if you're willing to do something that other guys aren't willing to do, well, that's going to set you apart when you do get the opportunity to show yourself in front of coaches. Maybe it's July, maybe it's this fall. It's going to be at some point in time, you're going to have to, if you really want to be a lacrosse player, you're going to have to show up, and you're going to get an opportunity. Someone's going to give you an opportunity, and you need to make the most of it. So if you've done what other guys weren't really necessarily willing to do to make the most of it, you're going to use that opportunity well. So I would tell parents, just encourage your kids to do that. You don't have to set the path for them, but just encourage them. Like, hey, like, you got a lacrosse stick, you got a ball, we have these cones down in the garage. Like here's some drills that, like, you can look at, like, and I'm sure kids will find that on their own. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they can do to make themselves better players, and use this time that they have. But I think setting that schedule for yourself is critical. And I think also just understanding where you need to get better is important. And that's what your high school and club coaches are there for. They're going to help you. They're going to tell you where you need to get better. And then first and foremost, particularly for our schools, if you're not getting it done in the classroom, it doesn't really matter. So, you still have to do well this semester, even though it's a really tough situation academically. And so put in a pattern of behavior for yourself that where you're getting your work done, and doing well academically, so that the doors of a Bowdoin, of a Hamilton, and of a Salisbury can be open for you. Because if you're not, then those places are not going to be open for you. And that's kind of what I would say to families and recruits right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach Archbell. Great insight. Very much appreciated. Coach Berkman, you have the floor, sir.
Well, coaches, some great ideas, some great suggestions. I guess first of all, in regard to your question, MV, I think the moms and the dads and the players right now, don't panic. I think a lot of people are worried about the recruiting process and, what's going to happen, and am I going to get recruited, and am I going to get seen enough? The process may get changed a little bit. We just went through a great change 2 years ago that we all had to adapt to when we got away from the really early stuff, and everybody adapted, and everybody was okay, and it kind of worked out for everybody. The process is probably going to change a little bit in the timing in the next year, especially as we recover from this whole pandemic. But it'll be okay. We're all college coaches. What do we need? We need players. We don't score any goals. We don't scoop any ground balls, and we can't play without you guys. And, but college coaches are competitive guys, and they want to win. They're going to find the players. Believe me, I think Coach Archbell and Coach Barnard probably have had some moment of every day where they're thinking about that next guy for Hamilton and that next guy for Bowdoin that they're trying to find. So we're going to find those guys, whether it takes us a little bit later in your junior year or a little bit maybe into your senior year. It's going to work out. And club coaches like you, MV, You guys are all great coaches. You do a great job teaching, but you guys are entrepreneurs too. You're great entrepreneurs. And my son's one of them with 3D and, in Denver. They're always in a think tank thinking about that next opportunity as entrepreneurs to showcase that talent. Believe me, if the timetable gets changed here, which I'm sure it's going to a little bit, the summer gets pushed back to fall, you guys are going to find ways to showcase your players' talents, and we're definitely going to find ways to get there to see those so that we can have players to score goals and to win games. So, I would say to mom and dad, relax, don't worry. It's all going to pay off, and it's going to be okay. It's really going to be okay. To the players themselves, in the recruiting thing, I would say, again, like we said to our players, that, every mistake, every downtime always presents an opportunity. And for you, I think number one right now, and I went back and looked at some of our guys real quickly, of online classes versus, regular in classroom classes. And fact of life is the GPA of an online class in recent memory, people have done a little bit better, on online classes than they have, at maybe in the classroom classes. So that being said, let's get a 4.0 this semester. Let's improve my grade point from what it was before, because I have a little bit more time and I have a lot less distractions. And I can focus on number one so that I can open more doors in the recruiting process because I have a higher grade point. 2, playing college lacrosse is very difficult now. I don't care what school you go to, it's very demanding. It's extremely competitive. And as good as you think you are right now, it's going to be a big eye-opener when you get there. It's going to be a big eye-opener when you get in that weight room the first day and you see these bigger guys that are 22 years old that are men just crushing it. It's going to be intimidating. That first day of fall ball when you're out there and you thought you were pretty good, man, and everybody shoots it a lot harder, everybody moves it, and everything is so much quicker. And as a lot of people realize, it's not what you've done before you get there, it's what you do when you get there and how you respond that's going to end up determining your destiny. And that's, coming back to what I started out with and where our program is at, is that, this is an opportunity for you now to really learn how to work hard on your own for 2 hours to 2.5 hours a day, getting stronger, getting faster, getting more skilled, so that you're a man when you arrive and you're ready to play at that next level sooner than later. And for most kids, it's always later because it takes them time to bridge that gap. So, find the time, like Coach Barnard says, hey, you got to have this disciplined time today. From 11 to 1, I'm out there and I got a plan for those 2 hours. We're not going to the weight room without a plan. Today's Thursday. This is what I do on Thursdays. Today's Friday. Man, this is what I do on Fridays. And having that plan. Now, in regard to our guys right now in that plan, a couple things. I've been communicating a lot with Kyle Hartzell, who's one of our former players, is one of the big originators of the PLL and a world team player. And he's sending me videos every day. He's got all these little individual videos, and I got a defensive group, and man, they're getting 2 or 3 individual drills that they could do each day on their own. That's going to help them get better and give them some other ideas to be creative in their backyard if they're not so creative themselves. And then our strength coach, Matt Nine, and a couple other strength coach, the Lynchburg strength coach, which was one of our former prodigies, and 2 other guys are producing daily workouts right now that are online that you can get on Facebook. And we've gotten them links to that, so it makes it very easy for them to get a couple dumbbells and some things that they can do with their own body weight, as Coach Barnard says, to get better on their own, especially for some guys that don't have that direction or that motivation on their own, that they can follow them along. So those are a couple things that we're doing with our guys to hopefully help them utilize a structured time, like Coach Barnard says, to focusing on moving forward with their game in this competitive game that we play now.
Great, thanks, coaches. You know, I feel like the volunteer assistant coach and every other coach in the huddle has talked, so I probably shouldn't say anything. You guys pretty much nailed it. Super helpful. This will really help athletes, student athletes, help families, help parents. You know, takeaways just from my notes. You know, I've learned so much every time we do something like this. You know, leadership is leadership, and Coach Berkman, your presence and how you handle things is always inspiring. But you know, your message is spot on. You know, and Coach Archbell, you know, the things that you said were so perfectly fundamental, and that's really, I think, everything reverts to. You know, and Coach Barnard, your heartfelt stuff is right on point. You know, there are going to be teachable moments here. There are going to be learnable moments. You know, the executive function and time management piece is something that was pretty interesting that all of you brought up. And you addressed it in different ways stylistically, but you know, it came down to fundamentals of time management and focus and prioritizing. So gentlemen, thank you very much appreciated. You know, a message of, you know, leadership and courage, but also vigilance and compassion in these times. You know, our prayers go out to all the families, you know, of young men that we've coached and others who have been affected by this situation. You know, and let's all pull together. It's inspiring to hear all you guys share these views, and it's reassuring, you know, to hear the views of men and leaders that are doing things the right way, and you guys truly are. So thank you so much for that. I'm honored, and we are humbled to have this content. So thank you very much.
Thanks, MV.
Thanks, MV. Jason, Scotty, thanks. Best of luck to you guys.
Yeah, you too. Good to see you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see everyone.
Yep, we can stay on here if you guys want to switch to